So I had this moment in that chicken restaurant where I said, "Oh, this is a real flavor genre of chicken that'll last forever." I think the fact that it is something that's going to probably be a flavor option that's available, in perpetuity, probably is one of the reasons that we've been able to do something new or better. And then I also think that a lot of people probably thought it was a fad at the same time and said, we don't want to get into that. That's gonna burn itself out. And nobody big got in on the national side. So Dave's was able to sort of grab it and run away with it early on.
What makes Dave's Hot Chicken tick? Hello, this is Jonathan Mays, editor-in-chief of Restaurant Business, and in this week's episode of A Deeper Dive, I speak with Jim Bitticks, the newly minted CEO of Dave's Hot Chicken. This is a great conversation with the chief executive of one of the country's hottest brands, literally and figuratively. We talk with Jim about what makes the brand tick and why it's so popular. We also talk about how things are going under new owner Roark Capital and whether anything will change with the new ownership structure. We ask him about the company's superfast growth and how it combats the potential pratfalls of such growth. A lot of restaurant chains that grow fast ultimately end up failing fast. Jim addresses that particular concern. And we talk about the chain's unique strategy of having top executives as operators and how that works. We're talking hot chicken on A Deeper Dive, so please check it out. Okay, I'm here with Jim Bitticks. Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks.
Well, so I hear you got a new job.
Yes, I did. I was recently promoted to CEO of Dave's Hot Chicken.
Well, congratulations on the gig. Tell me, how are things going to change now that you're in charge?
I hope that they're not going to change too much, to be honest with you. I think we've had a pretty good run, and I would like to keep that going. Bill Phelps, who was the CEO, is now our executive chairman, so he's still heavily involved. So I think it's more like CEO training wheels for me, because Bill's, he's involved daily. I talk to him probably every other day, if not more. And I don't anticipate a lot of change other than things will just keep getting better and better, I hope.
Had he been sort of training you for this? I mean, did you know this was coming at some point or what?
Yeah, this is a little sooner than I expected, but I think this had always been the idea or the thought, or at least maybe only on my part. He promoted me to president about 5 years ago, and I think that was on purpose. I don't know that he was planning on jumping out anytime soon, but to sort of split, the job duties that he would normally have done. So yeah, I think this was always the intended scenario, unless I were to opt out by having some type of big scandal or something where they're like, we can't promote you, you're out. Sorry, Jim. So I think so.
Yeah. All right. So how are things different now that Roark Capital owns you guys?
They're not incredibly different. I expected it to be much different than it actually turned out to be. I've been through a couple of private equity deals with other brands, and it's always there's always significant differences. I would say that for our CFO and our finance team, there are a lot of differences. There's been a lot of moves, on the financial side, and a lot of the reporting stuff is different. Day-to-day operations of the company, I think, are not remarkably different at all. I would say they're very minimally different. My day-to-day is a little bit different, or maybe more more accurately, my week-to-week. I didn't have a ton of contact with any of the Roark guys. I do a weekly call with our managing directors. And so that's sort of, I thought it was going to be like being on the hot seat. It's not quite that bad, but it's definitely a new experience for me. So that part's different, but I think the day-to-day stuff is all kind of, run of the mill, same as it used to be.
Now, the hot seat stuff would probably come when you start having issues, wouldn't you? Like, essentially, as long as Dave keeps doing fine, you're probably the private equity guys, I would imagine. In Dave's case, they'd probably want to leave you alone.
Yeah, knock on wood. I hope that's true. I think different private equity firms probably operate differently. Bill operated with a couple of different private equity firms for better part of 20 years when he was at Wetzel's. and he describes the Roark experience as being completely different. That Roark is like the creme de la creme, and they handle it differently than his previous experience has been. So, I mean, that's what I have to go off of.
Do you talk with the other Roark executives yet? I mean, I know that they have in the past held some stuff. Do they do anything like
Yeah,
that?
I haven't yet in this capacity. I have when I've sat on various panels. I sat on a panel with Joe Gueth. He's a CEO at CKE. I don't know how to say his last name. I sat on a panel with Jim, forgot his last name, like Hart, but he was from Focus or from To Go Foods.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go to
So
foods,
I've
yes.
sat on a few, and they've all been very complimentary of Roark. That I actually, the Jim Holdhauser, I think was his last name. I sat with him on a panel either right before the deal closed or right after the deal closed, and asked him questions, and he was super complimentary as well. So it's actually turned out to be very good. We're about 9 months in or 8 months in, and things have been pretty strong.
Mm-hmm. So, how is Dave's doing right now?
Dave's is doing really well. We've run into a couple of issues on sales here in the back half of quarter four. I think similar to many other brands, we saw a deceleration. January was significantly better. We flipped by about 6.5 points. February is about the same as January. So we'll see. The weather really caught us. I don't know if it caught us off guard, but we're so much larger now than we were a year ago. And we have a lot more clusters of locations in cold areas that the impact was pretty severe for us. So we'll see as things warm up and we get through the rest of February and March. Looking at last year, back half of February and all of March was really strong for us. So I'm a little nervous about those just to make sure that we've got enough momentum to get through those. But like I said, the back half of the year wasn't as strong for Dave's. So I'm hopeful that even if we struggle a little bit at the beginning of the year, we'll be able to pick it back up as we progress throughout 26.
How has been I mean, like you guys have been growing by, as you mentioned, leaps and bounds. Like one of the fastest growing restaurant chains really in
Yeah.
the past several years, going from a parking lot, a parking lot thing late at night by a bunch of poor people, to a billion-dollar company in less than a decade. How are things? I mean, like, how is it different operating a brand when you get to a certain size, today versus say just 2 years ago?
Yeah, I'll say for sure. Last year we opened 136 locations on a base of 261, if I remember correctly. So we grew by 50%, which is a huge number to grow by. And what we've seen, especially when we open in markets where we already existed, we've seen some of the cannibalization thing that most brands see as they start to densify markets. For a lot of franchisees, they're not scared, but they worry about like, okay, how long will it take to come back? We usually see it come back within about a year, but we've never doubled size in 2 years before, which is what we're about to do this year. We should open about 140 locations this year. So we will have opened 276 locations on a base of 261 by the end of 26, if that makes sense, over a 2 year period of time. So I think it's much more monolithic. It's much more like a big train, and it's difficult to stop the train or turn the train around once it gets going because of the sheer inertia of the massiveness of it. And so I think that's a big one for us to sort of figure out, okay, what do we do to hurdle the potential impact of cannibalizing ourselves with new locations as we grow. I hired on our CMO, who'd been the CMO for the last 4 years. His name was Brad Haley. He retired at the end of 25, and we brought in a new guy. His name is Brandon Roten. And he's been around for a while. He's worked for brands like Wendy's, Potbelly, Papa John's, and he's got big shoes to fill and a big job to do in terms of how do we continue to grow sales as we continue to grow store count, which is a big challenge.
Mm-hmm. You ever any concern about the speed of that growth? Because that is very, very fast. And
Yeah, a lot of concerns.
we have seen a lot of restaurant chains that have had struggles. I mean, I've made a lot of money over the years writing stories about companies that grew too fast and then failed. So, what are
Yeah.
you doing to prevent that from happening in
Yeah,
Dave's case?
I think it's a really, I mean, I think it's a really good question. I'm a franchisee of Dave's myself. I was fortunate enough with Bill to be let into the club. We always tell people that we only franchise to multi-unit, multi-brand franchisees that have a lot of experience, except for my group. My group didn't have any franchising experience. We got in sort of without having to meet that requirement. James McGeehee, who's our CFO for the company, is my business partner in that. And then we have another business partner that is an actual franchisee who is qualified. So that's sort of how we skated in into this role. We have 4 locations open. We're in the Inland Empire of California, and our fourth location sits 10 miles to the east of one location, 10 miles to the west of another location, and 8 miles north of another location. And all 3 of those took about a 10% hit or so when we opened it. That's tapered off quite a bit now. That was about 6 months ago. And so it's a good question, but our experience so far has been, as the awareness grows and people refill the restaurants that some of the sales moved from, you sort of balance back out and it comes back up. So is it a concern? Yes. Have we over cannibalized ourselves yet in any particular market? Not really. We started to a bit about 4 or 5 years ago in Orange County, and we realized that we were going a little too fast with too many locations, and we pivoted. And that pivot was really smart. I mean, it was really good for us to be able to pivot, and we were able to make it all work. So I think it's a matter of like for example, what we did to pivot is we spaced them out more. Obviously, once you have several locations in the hopper, what are you going to do? You're going to have to open them, or you're going to have the franchisee's going to have to take a hit. But we were able to pivot enough that we spaced them out more. Those 10 miles that I just quoted, that was on purpose, to give ourselves enough that the third party radius, which is roughly 5 miles, generally speaking, wasn't as impacted. Of those 3 locations that I mentioned, the one that's only 8 miles away is impacted more than the other 2 that are 10 miles away, which fits sort of the data and our understanding of what happens when we open locations really close to each other. In talking to the Roark Capital guys a couple of weeks ago, I was bringing this topic up, and they said, that's very normal. We see that a lot with the brands as we open them. And then what happens is, as the awareness grows, the sales come back. So I'm hopeful that they're not wrong, and as we continue to grow and densify markets, we will see that phenomena occur for us also.
So you open locations with third party delivery in mind. Did I get that correct?
For sure, 100%. That was a big learning post COVID, as we came out of COVID with, I mean, during COVID it was 75% of sales, and it tapered down as we came out of COVID. Roughly now, third party delivery for us is about 26 or 28%. And online and app ordering is about 12%. So we're roughly 37% digital. When we open very close, one restaurant to another, we definitely see a shift on the third party delivery when they're within. We did several at the beginning within 5 or 6 miles of each other, and those had a lot of impact. So we've been very conscious about spacing those out. Sometimes franchisees, though, they want them close to go, oh, this is a great trade area, or this is a great market. We need to get another location in here, and it's self impact. So that's a lot different than 2 different franchisees that are sort of on the borders of each other, and they impact each other negatively. That's always frustrating. So
Right. I mean, usually, like if you want, like I think a lot of franchisees tend to like to have their own territory where they can dictate the number of stores that they have in an area, and they don't. Right.
yeah, most
Um,
of our territories are like that. It's like in more dense areas where you sold, like I said, Orange County versus LA County in California. There's several franchisees in Southern California, but in I don't know, Chicago, there are 2 franchisees. And one of them controls most of the territory. The other one has like a smaller portion at the top.
One of them on this podcast, in fact, a few weeks ago. So,
Raj Patel.
yes, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
he was
he's one
fantastic.
of our very best franchisees. He's also the lead person on our franchise advisory board. We call it the Dave's Collaboration Council, but he's very involved, very in tune, very engaged.
Mm-hmm. So why have executives owning restaurants as a franchisee? What's the
Yeah.
benefit? What does Dave's get out of that besides franchisee?
Yeah, so I've had a few groups, a few franchisees said, "Isn't that a conflict of interest?" I said, "No, I think it's actually a confluence of interest because what happens for me personally is that I probably care a lot more than I did prior to being a franchisee. I hate to say that. If you had asked me when I was at Blaze Pizza, I was at Blaze Pizza for 8 years before jumping to Dave's. If you had said rate yourself in terms of like how connected to the franchisees you are, how much you feel the franchisees paying, I would have said, oh, I'm an A, easy A. In retrospect, I would give myself a B. And I think I really understand it at a much different, much higher level now. Operations my thing. I've always been in ops, but from the construction side of things, from the build outs of restaurants, the all of the real estatey things of like when we had to sign our first personal guarantee for a lease, and the rent is 210 a year, so 18K a month. My two other partners, we each signed the personal guarantee independently, meaning if James were to be thrown in prison for embezzlement, for example, James is the CFO. That's why that's funny.
I mean,
And
yeah, as happens with CFOs, sure.
sometimes, and if the other partner were to be, for some reason, pass away, he has health issues. So uh, all that lease money is on my shoulders. And I remember signing this, going like, "Wow, this is pretty hefty." Then the spending of $1 million to get a location open, I think it changed my perspective on what franchisees are actually investing to grow a brand. You mentioned Raj Patel. He has 22 locations open. That probably represents a $20 million investment, maybe 18 to $20 million investment. That's pretty hefty. That's a lot to commit to grow a brand. So I think it changed my perspective on that side of things for sure. We rolled out a product 3 years ago. We wanted to roll out an Oreo cookie shake. No big deal. Everybody's got them. But as you start to dig into it, you're gonna probably spend $4,000 on equipment, and probably 2,000. That's per location, and $2,000 on adding electrical, and then the ops functionality of like we have to clean the blenders, we have to meet whatever QA or food safety sides of it. And so my bright idea was, what if we didn't mix it? What if we didn't use blenders? What if we just put the Oreos on top and call it a top loaded shake? And I remember Bill was like, "That's crazy." I was like, "Let's test it. Let's just try." And it sold really well. So we ended up launching this product that was very franchisee friendly, increased sales, and didn't cost anything but the cost of some pans and lids and spoons. So that one was pretty easy. But that's the type of thing that I feel like we're really focused on. James does a lot of analyses of like labor and different productivity measures to see, how can we get better? How can we do more? And I think his interest in that, although it's always been very strong and very high, I think it's even more strong or stronger and higher because it directly impacts both of us financially. So I think it makes us better franchisors to be franchisees. I think it makes us very interested in how we get better and how we improve, and puts us in a really interesting position with franchisees because I think they like us because of that. I think they like the fact that we've got real skin in the game, from ourselves. And it sort of puts you in this like sort of weird position of like feeling their pain while also trying to be the franchisor. I can see why it could be a conflict, but I really do think it makes us better franchisors overall.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see why it would be a conflict. I mean, I understand that. I mean, but at the same time, I mean, you mentioned the personal guarantee. Like at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like one of the biggest, I mean, the fact of the matter is franchisees who buy into a brand, and especially if they've been in there for a bit, they've they've got skin in the game because they could lose a lot off of this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I mean to me that is, as long as, I would suspect, as long as you ensure that the that conflict doesn't go across markets, or any sort of favorability. That's where it can happen. But the fact of the matter is, I tend to think that a lot of these disputes over between franchisor and franchisee tend to be around, not just a personal guarantee, but the fact that the management doesn't always necessarily know or understand what the meaning of their dictates or requirements are. So, I mean, to me, I can see why that would be a
Yeah,
benefit.
one of the things that Bill put into the agreement when we first became franchisees was a buyback provision. So Dave's had the right, if we ever went through a transaction, to buy us back at a preset number, at a preset multiple, which was that. So it sort of kind of eliminated the conflict. It was, we were building restaurants, we were using our capital, and Dave's would ultimately be able to benefit off of it during a sale. As we went through the sale process, James and I were able to successfully argue, like, wow, guys, how bad is this going to look to franchisees if we sell the company and then we're out of the franchise game. We're not in it anymore. I feel like that sends the wrong message, because we really didn't sell because we were ready to be out. We sold because the founders wanted to have an event, and the price was right, and we were able to really take really good care of our team from a bonus and payout perspective. A lot of people made a lot of money, not just the shareholders. Like, everybody on the team got a bonus that was roughly their annual pay or higher. And in the day that we transacted, I think we made 19 people millionaires out of the deal. And it wasn't just the people that were already millionaires. It was like new people that were part of like the team that built the company. So there were a lot of reasons, or a lot of, I guess, benefits to doing the transaction. And so as we were getting ready to do the transaction, when we made that argument of, wouldn't it be better if we stayed franchisees, everybody agreed, because we weren't really selling out or getting out. We're all still here. And so I think it was the right thing to do optically, and it was really beneficial, potentially for James and me. And we have several people on our team who are investors in our individual LLCs that are the franchise owners of that entity, of the overall franchise entity of the 4 locations. So it turned out to be one of those things that we were able to not actually have to sell. And I think franchisees were really happy with that. I think it sent the right message. Also, that we're not dumping and running, or cutting and running and getting out.
Right. So you've been with Dave's for some time. What do you think? What is the secret sauce? Why has it been as popular as it's been?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, I've been here 5.5 years, and I'll be honest. When I was interested in the job, and I went and tried the food, and I started checking it out, in the back of my head, I thought, this is probably going to be like, what, like 3 or 4 years, sort of like potentially a fad type product, or something like that. I mean, honestly, I really wasn't sure that this was something that was going to have a lot of longevity. Like hot chicken, I tried it once in Nashville a couple of years earlier at a conference or something, and it's whatever, it's tasty enough. But then I ended up in I don't even remember what the brand was, another chicken tenders brand that had 3 different options for flavors. They had, plain or regular, just regular chicken tenders. They had buffalo, and then they had Nashville hot chicken. Those were the 3 flavor. And there, at this like kind of poof or epiphany type thing happened. I was like, oh, this is like buffalo. This is like buffalo flavor potentially. I'm 52. When I was, I don't know, 19 or 20, Buffalo Wings made their big, debut on the national scene. And I remember, because I wasn't aware of what Buffalo Wings were. I was like, buffaloes don't even have wings. Like, what are Buffalo Wings? Like, I don't even get it. And there was a brand called Native New Yorker that had like 10-cent Tuesdays or something. And my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and I at the time went and tried them, and we were like, oh, it's chicken wings. Like, oh, delicious, by the way. And now everybody's got buffalo everything. You buffalo wraps, buffalo chicken sandwich, just buffalo wings. It became a staple. Same thing happened with teriyaki chicken. Teriyaki chicken bowls like burst on the scene maybe in the late 90s or something, and now teriyaki is a thing everywhere. That being said, even when I was a kid, ranch dressing didn't exist until like I was like 12. Before that, it was Thousand Island dressing. Everything was Thousand, and then ranch dressing became a thing. It's a staple. So I had this moment in that chicken restaurant where I said, "Oh, this is a real flavor genre of chicken that'll last forever." So I think the fact that it is something that's going to probably be a flavor option that's available, in perpetuity, probably is one of the reasons that we've been able to do something new or better. And then I also think that a lot of people probably thought it was a fad at the same time and said, we don't want to get into that. That's gonna burn itself out. Nobody big got in on the national side. So Dave's was able to sort of grab it and run away with it early on. There are other players, and there are some bigger players that have gotten in, but we're so far ahead. We have 404 locations open. Even if somebody jumped in right now, it'd be hard to catch up. I mean, it's certainly possible, but it would be hard to catch up.
Right.
When I was at Blaze Pizza, there were 4 or 5 big players already in the fast casual build your own pizza space. And we were cannibalizing each other, and it was very competitive. If you opened a mod across the street from a Blaze, they both suffered. If you were third to market, if we opened Blaze after a mod and a Pyology were open, it was, they would be underperformers for sure. So this has been a different thing from that perspective, also because it's only mom and pops that tend to be in. And then I think the other big piece is the social media aspect. The 3 founders of Dave's, one of them's name is Armand Oganesian. You should have him on someday. He's a riot. He's great to talk to, and you get a lot of insights off of him. But his whole focus at the very beginning was on Instagram, and he was the right age for that, and he ran away with it. It was absolutely great.
Yeah. Yeah. He has been on the podcast years ago.
Oh, yes. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Years ago when you guys first kind of burst onto the scene a little bit. But he has been on the podcast, and yes, he is fantastic. He is an interesting cat. I will say that.
He is. I agree.
Without any question. Very, very interesting and hilarious person.
That's right.
So,
You
but
know him.
speaking of the founders, like, how do you keep that? Like, because they brought a certain, I don't know, like culture to the brand and attitude. I mean, how do you keep that going now that you're owned by just a private equity firm,
Yeah,
not
I think that.
exactly known for
Yeah, the founderness, the
yeah,
founderliness of,
well,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so this great question. One of the ways that you keep it as holistic as you can is you keep the founders around. Armand and Dave are both they're both paid members of the team. Armand is our chief brand officer. Dave is our chief culinary or chief food officer. Although it's true that we don't see them a lot because they're out spending their money and having a great time. They are very involved in like any changes, especially food oriented or brand type changes. They're very connected to and involved in. Armand is a little bit more involved than Dave, but he's on the weekly marketing calls every week, and he's the guy that sort of created the brand in his head, and he's still 100% part of the brand without any question. Like anything we're going to try, or like we ran our first ever Super Bowl ad in New York and California this over the weekend. And as we were deciding whether we were going to do that, that would be something that Armand, and he did. He weighed in on it and like, yeah, that's so cool. We should do this. We should do that. I mean, there were a lot of pieces like that. The other thing, Armand is still on the board. He's a voting board member. So he's got a say in it. So he's still involved. And even like when we chose what firm, because there were several firms that were interested, and we got down to 2 or 3 at the end. And when we chose Roark Capital, Neil Aronson flew out. We all went to dinner. And Armand did one of those things where he's like, I really like the guy. I felt really good about all of the pieces. Our managing directors, names, we have two of them. One's name's Jeff Hill. The other one is Mike Sharkey. They have demonstrated and we've known them for probably 4.5 years now, because they started checking us out. They're sort of like high school talent scouts that were visiting in the middle school games, if that makes sense. And they were out taking a look at us back in 2021. We met them in 2021 at like RFDC or multi-unit franchise or one of those conferences. And then they kept visiting and chatting every year, 2 or 3 times a year. We'd connect and get caught up. And so we got to know them very well, and they've been very consistent about sort of what their plan, what their goal, what the way they look at the business is, and to keep growing it the right way. So I think all those things mixed together is how you don't let it get away from you. Essentially.
Superb. Jim, this was fantastic. Really appreciate you joining me on the podcast.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And that should do it for this week's episode of A Deeper Dive, which was edited, as always, by Spoons. You can find this and other episodes of the podcast on our website at www.restaurantbusinessonline.com/article/deeper-dive. But by all means, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I'm Jonathan Mays, your host, podcaster, producer, and the editor-in-chief of Restaurant Business. Thank you for listening.